This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Bill Bartholomew here for another edition of Rhode Island's podcast of record, Bartholomew Town, talking Providence mayoral politics today with Gonzalo Cuervo, one of 4 Democratic candidates who are running for mayor. We've already heard from Brett Smiley here on the pod earlier this year. We'll hear from all of the candidates in that race, as most of the races, right, over the course of the next several months. And this is a really fascinating conversation that touches on something that's been somewhat thematic over the last few weeks here on the pod, and that is this notion that I've kind of coined or alluded to of the new versus the old Providence. The new Providence being, like the Superman building project, the relocation or revitalization of Kennedy Plaza and the relocation of the transit terminal, everything that's happening in the 195 land, and how that creates a dynamic for, a lot of exciting and interesting projects. But at the same time, you've got the quote-unquote old or existing Providence that can't be left behind. It has to be integrated into these new concepts and the vision that is being proposed and in some ways is playing out right now. So really fascinating stuff on that, plus a lot of other topics here today with Gonzalo here on the pod. Remember, you can send me an email, bill@ripodcast.com, or tweet at me at Bill Bartholomew with your questions for specific candidates or just general questions. I'm starting to compile them and getting some really cool stuff, some really interesting stuff from a lot of you. And I'm going to incorporate those into both the conversations that we have with candidates and elected officials, and also some of the opinion/analysis that we do here on the pod, whether it be in the roundtable format or one-on-ones with reporters and expertise, or even just me in some of the monologue stuff that I do. So keep those coming. Bill@ripodcast.com. I'm going to roll them out pretty soon. Want to thank our sponsors, Pure Vita Labs and Commonwealth Care Alliance. And I want to let you know, coming up over the next 2 weekends, we've got some shows here at the Loft, 669 Elmwood Avenue in Providence. This Friday, May 6th, myself plus Rafe Rashid of Ravi Shavi and Jesse the Tree of Strange Famous Records, 2 of my favorite Providence artists, performing here at the Loft. That's an 8 p.m. start time. And then next Friday, May 13th, myself with Gabriella Rossi, plus Ian O'Neill of Deer Tech, right here at the Loft. So some great stuff heading your way in terms of live music. If you want more information about that, here we go for the, 15th time in this episode, bill@ripodcast.com, or just follow me on social media at Bill Bartholomew, and you'll see all the details there. But great to have shows resuming here at the Loft. We had a several-month pause due to COVID, and I understand COVID's not over, believe me. But I think we're in a place where we can resume those shows here this spring, and looking forward to doing so over the next couple of weeks. Okay, let's get to it. My conversation with Gonzalo Cuervo right here on Rhode Island's podcast of record, Bartholomew Town. We were offline speaking with Gonzalo Cuervo, candidate for Providence mayor. And you just brought up a really interesting point, because I've been sort of on this kick of like, well, we got to, we're going to ramp up our election coverage here on Bartholomew Town and in general, because all of a sudden, next thing you know, it'll be July and everyone will be checked out in one way, shape, or form for summer, either people who leave for the summer or people who just have lost interest in politics. And you raised just like this really fascinating point, which is that due to the pandemic, people are already checked out in general in large numbers, and it changes the dynamics of the campaign. I guess let's start with that conversation because it's extremely fascinating.
Well, yeah, Bill, thanks. Thanks for having me today.
Of course, yeah. As
we were talking, one of the things I've been on the campaign trail for a while now, for more than a year. And what I realized is at the beginning, I was having a lot of interactions, one-on-ones, talking to people and, having backyard meet and greets and such. Now that campaigning has become more formalized with the door knocking, with more structured events, what I realized, and I've been talking to other folks that are also involved in politics, is that a lot of people are preoccupied with uncertainty and trying to figure out, what they want to do or what they're going to do. There's been a lot of loss. There's been emotional loss. There's been physical loss. There are people who have lost loved ones. There are people who lost their businesses or their jobs. And we've all collectively have been going through this kind of reevaluation process of what do we want to do with our lives? and what is valuable and what is important to us. And I think in a small way that is reflected in a lot of the attitudes that I found with people is that even though we're just a little more than 4 months away from primary day, people really aren't tuned into the election yet. And they're more concerned kind of with their own personal or family situations, which is incredibly understandable because we've been through a lot. And I think, sociologists and psychologists and historians will be writing about this era for a long time.
Yeah, no question. And how does that change your approach to campaigning? Because now it's not only informing people about who you are and what your message is, but also now it's like, do you know that there is an election and do you care? And if you don't, how can I make you care?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally people care about, like here in Providence, people care about the big issues, right? Mm-hmm. Education is always tops. Public safety is tops, and quality of life issues. Everything that ranges from the delivery of city services to cultural programming to, keeping our streets clean. These are issues that people care about, but it seems like they don't seem to be as top of mind as you would expect at this point, in the electoral calendar. Yeah. Which is completely understandable. And so what I've been doing is I've been having a lot of conversations with folks about those issues that matter to them primarily. And this all goes back to the same thing because, the reason why I'm running is because I believe that there is a significant disparity. There's a significant opportunity gap in our city between a small percentage of our population that's doing really well and doing amazing things and a large percentage of our population that continues to struggle and is getting by and now is hit with inflation. They suffer the effects of the pandemic. We have this super hot housing market that folks feel like they're getting priced out of. People are getting priced out of apartments for rent. They're getting priced out of the opportunity to buy homes. We've seen home values skyrocket, over the course of the last year and a half. And this is very concerning to people because guess what? Salaries haven't skyrocketed. Income hasn't skyrocketed. So we can't keep up. And those are the issues that really affect people. And so my pitch to voters is very simple. We can talk about the issues that impact us. We can talk about quality of life. We can talk about education. We can talk about the potholes in the street. But if we aren't figuring out how to get more people into the solid middle class, how to get people to expand their economic opportunity, to expand their purchasing power, we aren't really going to say much because that underlies everything. We talk about parental engagement when it comes to education and how important that is. Well, when you're juggling 3 or 4 jobs and you're doing Amazon Flex and Uber Eats and Grubhub in addition to a part-time job somewhere, you don't have time for civic engagement. Yeah. You don't have time. Like your bandwidth is consumed with survival, with figuring out how you're going to pay the bills. And so that's what we need to address. And that's really what I want to do as mayor. That's why I'm running for mayor, is because I think that, look, we can talk about potholes all day. We can talk about the pension deficit. But if we aren't figuring out a way to get our people to live better lives and to have more income and to feel more comfortable with their family situation, we aren't going to be successful.
Extremely, extremely interesting, especially in the context of what, I've been personally, I kind of borrowed a term from Mayor Alorzo, which he would use the new Providence idea. I think it was in like the budget address in 2019 that he rolled that term out. But I see it as, hey, look, congratulations. We have the Superman building coming likely, and it's going to be, well, the building's there, but the project's going to come along. There's going to be 285 apartments. We're going to change Kennedy Plaza, make it more welcoming. We're going to have, quote unquote, an upgrade there. We've got the pedestrian bridge, the Trader Joe's, Plant City. All this is happening. That's the new Providence. But to me, it feels like it's targeted more towards 20 to 40-year-olds who are in tech, meds and eds, or trust fund kids. Then there's the old Providence, the rest of the city, who are going to get priced out, likely not be able to move into the Superman building. And unless there's interconnectivity with transit, with programming, with engagement, and with concurrent construction of affordable housing in the city, you're going to basically annihilate the existing population, all for the sake of this new Providence. So how do we bridge these two worlds concurrently?
So I think there's value in having both this new Providence without leaving behind the traditional, the old Providence.
Yes.
And, the economy has evolved and things are evolving. Downtown is evolving. Downtown is transitioning from an office-based sector to essentially a residential neighborhood. Now, one of the challenges that we faced is, as I said earlier, is that the rising cost of housing is pricing folks out everywhere. Because what happens is this new Providence is expanding at a rate, and it's expanding by people who fortunately have the wherewithal to pay higher rents. And so what's happening is that the neighborhoods that were traditionally low income to moderate income, homes are being bought up, apartments are being bought up, rehabbed, and re-rented at much higher rates. And so this is causing displacement, and it's causing a lot of anxiety. And, when you see homes in Elmwood, for example, a triple decker on Sumter Avenue selling for almost $600,000, a home that just a couple of years ago you could pick up for $225,000, that the families that live in that neighborhood will never be able to afford to purchase a home at $600,000 with their current income. So what we need to do is we need to say, what are we doing to address housing? What are we doing to address economic opportunity? And what are we doing to help people survive and succeed so that they don't end up living in Central Falls? They don't end up, moving to Fall River or Pawtucket. And Bill, this doesn't just impact, when we talk about affordability of housing, we always talk about families and low income, folks that are struggling to get by. But this impacts the creative class a lot. I hear so many stories about artists and musicians that they've gotten priced out of Federal Hill. They've gotten priced out of Elmwood, the West End. There's a loss there. Providence has had a great arts and music scene for a long time, and we'll lose that. We'll lose that because we won't have the synergy of having all these creative folks, talking and hanging out and creating art and creating culture for us. That's a big loss for our city. We need to protect that. So what I want to do as mayor is I want to focus on housing. I want to focus on neighborhood and localized economic development. We have these great commercial corridors. Many of them are gateways to wealthier communities. If you look at Smith Street that leads into North Providence and Smithfield, you look at Charles Street that leads into North Providence and Lincoln, Cranston Street leads into Cranston. These are all communities that have higher median incomes than Providence does. There's an opportunity for us to develop those commercial corridors. They've kind of evolved on their own, but there's an opportunity for us to thoughtfully develop them, to generate more small business that will create more localized employment, pay more taxes, and attract dollars from those neighboring communities.
Rhode Island and national politics, media, arts, and newsmakers. Bartholomew Town with Bill Bartholomew, Saturdays at 3 p.m. on News Talk 99.7 FM and AM 630 WPRO.
Now back to B-Town.
That's a brilliant concept. And just going back to the notion of the creative class, which I completely 100% agree with and can see firsthand. Even in looking out my window right now, I can see where things are changing here in Elmwood, and it even goes beyond that to just the middle class in general. Even the upper middle class is feeling the squeeze there. But by localizing things, you can tap into the dynamic, the leadership, the dynamic. I guess just the attributes of specific parts of the city that can allow for an elevated economic experience for businesses and individuals.
Yes. And ultimately, we have to make a collective decision, right? We have to decide, are we going to build a future for Providence as a dynamic, multicultural, fabulous city with a diverse and exciting population, or are we going to settle for becoming a bedroom community for Boston?
Yeah.
That's a real choice. And we welcome folks who want to move here. I think it's exciting. I think it validates. I think the fact that so many people want to live and invest here validates the fact that this is an awesome city, right? Because we're really hard on ourselves and we're always like, all we can talk about are problems. But look, Providence is such a great place that people are lining up to move here and invest here. And that's wonderful. The challenge is that it's pricing out people who have been here and people who have made it a wonderful and amazing place. And we have to strike a balance between that. And that's what I want to do when I'm there.
Yeah. That's it. Amen. Because that is exactly, that to me is the great challenge of Providence. You talk about snow plows, which I think are important. And, obviously pension liabilities, how that impacts COLAs, and then parallel to housing and the community, of course, would probably be the 1A, 1B, which is education. Let's roll there. Should the city of Providence regain control of the Providence public school system? And if so, obviously, eventually they will, but should it be an urgent matter? And do you think it should happen ahead of the 2027, 2028 projection that RIDE is offering right now?
So my concern is that there is no sense of urgency at the state level to affect real change. So the longer RIDE has it, the longer we're kind of will be stuck in this limbo. And what happens with that limbo is that it ends up becoming just political discourse. It's an argument among sides without any real progress happening. My idea is this: we need to have two plans. When I become mayor, we're going to have two plans. One plan is to fight to get the school district back in city hands, right? And effect real change through a comprehensive, inclusive process, that brings in stakeholders, that elevates community voices, parent voices, and takes all these different perspectives into account. And the other plan is, if the state decides that they're going to keep this through 2027, we need to use that same model, that same energy, and that same organizing capacity and experience to prepare a legislative package and go up to the State House and affect the change that we want to see in our schools through the legislative process. And I think there will be a great opportunity, because there's always a honeymoon period in those first, 6 months, 8 months of having a new mayor and a new governor. And there will be an opportunity to really get people excited and motivated to participate and go to the State House and have a very concise and clear plan and say, look, these are our, half dozen bills or a dozen bills that will accomplish the change that we need to see in the Providence schools through the legislative process in the event that we don't get it back. But there's a small window. And that's part of when you're in an executive office like this, there's the statutory power that the charter gives you as mayor of Providence. And then there's a soft power, the ability to persuade and leverage, quote unquote, the bully pulpit. And I think there will be a great opportunity at the beginning of the next term, when hopefully I'm mayor of Providence, to affect some real change in that area.
When we look right now at the scope of the city on an infrastructure basis, it obviously ties into housing, and there's all of that without question. But I think there are legitimate questions. I sort of joked around moments ago that snow plows, it doesn't matter if no one can live in the city, but no one who currently lives here can afford to live here. But when you look at those logistical challenges, infrastructure challenges, whether you're talking bike lanes, whether you're talking speed humps or speed bumps, whatever it is, whatever it may be, where's the greatest need right now in terms of upgrading, whether it's with partnerships with the state or the federal government, or even just within Providence as a municipality? Where's the infrastructure need right now in your mind?
Well, look, we have challenges across the board. And the underlying challenge is economic, right? The city has a very limited road maintenance budget, for example.
Yep.
We have a almost non-existent sewer infrastructure maintenance budget, for example. So what we really have to do is, when people talk about infrastructure challenges, it's usually three-legged stool. There's the budget, which is the big challenge. There's management, which is running the departments right so that the job gets done in an efficient way, in a predictable way. And there's messaging, communications, which is letting folks know what's happening and getting them engaged and getting them to buy into this process. And I think there's opportunities to improve all three. The budgeting process is, we need to continue to grow the city's tax base. We need, and the quickest way to grow or the most definitive way to grow the city's tax base is to have more people buying homes, more people investing in businesses, the local economy growing, having the local economy growing. And so that's why, it's important, to also, we can't forget about downtown. Downtown generates a lot of economic activity for the city, but it also generates a lot of economic activity for the state. There's a lot of money that goes to the state from downtown that we don't really get back in terms of services, in terms of pilot or distressed communities money. So we need somebody who's going to be up there fighting for that as well. We have to look at our large nonprofit institutions to make sure that they're paying their fair share as well, because we have a significant amount of land that is not taxed. And this puts a undue burden on smaller taxpayers, homeowners and small business owners. So there's a lot of opportunity. But I would say that in terms of infrastructure, we have an opportunity to have an impact across the board. And really, there's look at our road maintenance schedules, improving our parks and particularly our recreation facilities, which many are crumbling. We already have begun a process of rehabilitating some of our schools using both city bond money and state bond money. I think that's an opportunity not just to remodel an old school, but to say, how can we adapt the school for use in the 21st century? We have parents who have to go to work early and who can't pick up their kids until later. And so how can we readapt some of this space for before school programs, after school programs, have kind of a more wraparound approach to education?
Yeah, so fascinating. And of course, the issue of taxation is going to come up, and it's going to be a sort of a binary issue, probably the way it's presented to a lot of people. Are you in favor of taxing Brown University or not? That's kind of like what it will appear to. So you would like to see an increased, we're talking cash into the coffers, tax burden on specifically Brown and other large nonprofits?
Yeah. So Bill, these conversations, they always become like this binary argument. And it's like, do you want to punish Brown or do you not want to punish Brown? It's not about being community. It's about developing a partnership. Look, Brown University, organizations like Brown University and Lifespan and Providence, we have a synergistic, there's an energy. We depend on each other's success. They bring a lot of value to the city, but they also create burdens for us in terms of the delivery of city services, in terms of street maintenance, in terms of public safety. And so this isn't a question about punishing an organization. This is about strengthening the relationship between the organization and the host community, which, by the way, I would argue taxpayers are being punished. Taxpayers here continue to see an increase in our tax burden, while these large institutions kind of wring their hands and they're like, sorry, we already contribute a lot. And that's why I keep bringing up the fact that we should look at, New Haven and Yale, and the fact that they started out in a very similar situation to us. And they've been able to, over the years, and most recently last year, they announced like this really comprehensive plan to develop a thoughtful, mutually rewarding relationship, so that both the university and the host community can succeed. That's what we want to accomplish here.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. A little different in the sense that Yale is right in the downtown, in many ways, right in the heart of downtown. But, it's not as if College Hill and downtown and the rest of the city of Providence are like, 25 minutes apart from each other. It's that synergy is possible. So that's an interesting.
I would argue that Brown University is downtown, because if you look at what we used to call the jewelry district, the knowledge district,
sure,
their footprint continues to increase at a rapid scale and will continue to increase. And so I would argue that they are downtown. They are an integral part of the community. They're not going anywhere. Brown isn't going to pick up and move to Johnston. We this is a marriage with no divorce. So we have to figure it out, and we have to, improve that relationship.
Last question, and there's so much to get to, and I hope that we'll be able to do this again before September. But you're somebody, since I've known you, that has you've wanted this job. It feels like it's in your blood to become mayor of Providence. You seem to have just a complete, authentic desire for this role to serve the city of Providence and position the city for grand success. Some of your opponents have a similar dynamic as well. Certainly Brett Smiley, since I've come to know him, I think that's what his destiny in his mind is to become mayor of Providence, and certainly seeing him on stage during the pandemic. I remember one time during the pandemic, question and answer sessions with the governor, I asked, I said, Mr. Smiley, could you please step to the microphone and explain what you're doing here? Because, to me, it was like he's there because he's an alumni of the Raimondo Network, or at the time, a member of the Raimondo Network. Let's put him in front of people, give him some face time because he's going to be the next mayor. How do you work that out when you're going against this? Your other opponents also have a strong desire to be mayor. I'm not suggesting they don't, but you're in a race where, there's no carpetbagger. It really is a challenge of ideals and ideas. And in many ways, you're up against somebody who has had a lot more face time and name recognition opportunities than you have. So that must be a challenge that is not like the congressional race where it's easy to say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, you don't even live here in the district, or something like that. It is a hard race to win.
Well, look, every race is a hard race to win. And if it were easy, people, we'd have 60 people running for mayor. It's not an easy race to win. We're applying for a job. We're applying for a very difficult job, an often thankless job. And there's a universe of 24,000 people that are reviewing our applications. Now, I would argue this. I was born in Providence. I became a community activist when I was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. I've owned small businesses here. I've helped a lot of people here. I've been involved with organizations my entire life. You can check out my website, gonzaloforprovidence.com, and learn all about me. I have 3 decades of tangible, deep roots in multiple communities in the city of Providence. And in addition to the fact, I spent more than a decade in City Hall working in leadership positions and also worked at the State House. So I would argue, look, I have the credentials combined with the love of this city, combined with a granular level knowledge of our city in ways that I would argue nobody else has. And it's up to me to make that pitch successfully. Are there other candidates who are great candidates? Sure, there are other candidates who are great candidates. That's always going to be the case. All I can do is argue why people should vote for Gonzalo Cuervo to be the next mayor of Providence. And that's what I've been doing and what I will continue to do right through September 13th.
Well, there he is, Gonzalo Cuervo, running for mayor of Providence in the Democratic primary. And, the sprint is on, 4 months ahead. And interesting at the top of the episode here, talking about the dynamics of running in the post-pandemic. So it's not post-pandemic. Let's be clear. I can speak. My wife just had monoclonal antibodies last week. The pandemic's not over either. But in a shifted mindset for the general population, a unique challenge. You're the first person who's actually brought that up here. And I think it's a really interesting dynamic. So a lot of challenges ahead.
Thank you.
Rhode Island's podcast of record, B-Town.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits. And 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.